6:02, so we're going to get things started. As with last meeting, we're going to start with an opening inspiration, and Janet Hammer, who is a member of our staff, is graciously volunteered to be the person who did that this time. We are approaching the solstice, the longest, darkest night of the year is Saturday, and it seemed fitting to share some thoughts, poems or reflections on the winter season, including the reminder that it gives us to hold on to the hope of light, even in the darkness. So I have a little poem to read at the end, but I've got a little basket of quotes. If you can pick one and read it. If the one you take, you just don't feel comfortable saying it, you can put it back in and pass, or say your own, or pick a different one. And then we'll just pass the mic around and take a moment.
I'm Andrea. Hi.
Or you've got your, yeah, we'll just do that.
It is better to light one small candle than to curse the darkness. Eleanor Roosevelt.
Hi, I'm Jeff. Let nothing dim the light that shines from within. Maya Angelou.
Michael Etten Hill. Hope is being able to see that there is light despite all the darkness. Desmond Tutu.
Hi, I'm Rain Feast. Hi, I'm Rain Feast. It says here, look at how a single candle can both defy and define the darkness. Anne Frank.
Robin Wang. Nature gives to every time and a season a beauty of its own. Charles Dickens.
Hi, I'm Megan. Snowflakes are one of nature's most fragile things, but just look at what they can do when they stick together. Author unknown.
Hi, I'm Maria Sippin. Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. Martin Luther King, Jr.
You want to grab the last one since Faith is gone and do the last?
Sometimes our fate resembles a fruit tree in winter. Who would think that those branches would turn green again and blossom? But we hope it, we know it. Even the strongest blizzards start with a single snowflake.
And so the shortest day came, and the year died, and everywhere down the centuries of the snow-white world came people singing and dancing to drive away the dark. They lighted candles in the winter trees. They hung their homes with evergreen. They burned beseeching fires all night long to keep the year alive. And when the New Year's sunshine blazed awake, they shouted, reveling. Through all the frosty ages, you can hear them echoing behind us. Listen, all the long echoes sing the same delight this shortest day. As promise wakens in the sleeping land, they carol, feast, and give thanks, and dearly love their friends, and hope for peace. And now so do we here now, this year and every year. Hope you enjoy your break and this special time of going inward and holding that light through the darkness. All right, thanks, Janet. So I guess that we just welcome to the 5th annual, or not 5th annual, all right, the 5th weekly, yeah, no, the 5th PCEF Committee Meeting. I would like to start with introductions. I know you all said your first name when you went around, but if I could get you just really quickly to give your full name, and then we'll go to the audience.
Andrea Hamburg, she, her.
Jeff Moreland Jr., he, him.
Michael Etten Hill. He, him, and welcome to my neighborhood.
Rain Feast Giantino Viatoro. He, him.
Robin Wang. He, him.
Megan Horst, she, her.
Maria Sippin, she, they.
Sam Barrasso, he, him.
Gail Palmer, she, her, Centennial Community Association, East Portland Action Plan.
Here, I'll just hold this. Janet Hammer, she, her, PCEF startup team.
Maggie Johnson, she, her.
Steely Cortez, he, him.
Conrad Hurdle, he, him.
Charity Fain, she, her.
Good evening, everyone. Tyrone Henry with Energy Trust of Oregon.
Hi, Mark Wyman with Energy Trust of Oregon.
Gary Walsworth, Multnomah County Weather Station.
Jose Flores, Multnomah County Weather Station.
Jenny Hall, she, her, Energy Trust of Oregon Solar Program.
Deb King, she, her.
Brian, he, him, Portland Democratic Socialists of America.
All right, thank you. And I'm Katie Lister with the PCEF startup team, she, her. Can you check the phone? I got it.
Rick Hodges, he, him.
Patrick McDade, he, they.
June Reyes, she, hers.
Okay, we do have some folks on the phone. If you're on the phone, can you announce yourself and introduce yourself and your affiliation if you have it? Let's get the mic up to them. Okay, go ahead.
Can you say that one more time?
I'll jump in. Steve Gelb, he, him, Emerald Cities Collaborative.
Anyone else want to announce themselves? All right, well, with that, I'd like to ask the committee members if everybody had an opportunity to look over the minutes. Yeah, and are there any comments, suggestions, edits, changes? Just wanted to also note for the record that Shanice Brittany Clark has joined us. Hi, Shanice. Well, if there are no changes to the minutes, then we will accept them. I don't think we need to go through the formal process that we identified last time to do that. And I don't believe, June, did anyone sign up? It doesn't look like anybody signed up for public comment. Is there anyone on the phone who would like to give public comment? Circle thing. All right, well then we will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is actually just moving right into a work session. And this is the work session that we were going to do last time, but we ran out of time, and so it got bumped to this to today. Hopefully everybody still has a copy of the memo that was sent out for the December 3rd meeting that kind of outlined all of the agenda items and potential subcommittee ideas that we had talked about. If not, I do have copies. Does anybody need a copy of that? No? Okay, then I think that we can get up and go over there to this whiteboard. And we're gonna put the phone, the folks on the phone on mute, and we will be sort of talking in a work session setting for about a half an hour, and then when we come back, we'll unmute the phone and go back into regular session. Okay.
Real quick, before folks get up, I meant to mention this. And completely, no, this is Sam Barrasso, and this is as I was messing around with this technology, I forgot to jump in here during the public comment. One thing I wanted to call out, and I think it's important because folks have read the news. Last week, City Council took actions where they adopted amendments where the they exempted certain categories that are that were originally subject to the Portland Clean Energy Fund surcharge. Specifically, they took actions to exempt construction as well as sales from the operation of residential garbage recycling services, as well as sales from the selling of retirement plans. During that, those changes did have the effect of reducing the fund estimated range from 54 to 71 million down to 44 to 61 million. I think the one thing I want to point out, and these are comments that were made by city council members, but it's something that it's been clearly communicated to us, is that the mayor as well as Commissioner Hardesty indicated clearly then that those were urgent changes they felt were absolutely necessary at the time. However, the city council as it stands today does not expect to take up any additional amendments or changes to the PCEF code. If any changes are expected to come, they expect them to come as a way of recommendations from you all. And so and as part of that, I've been very clear that we have a very incredibly busy workload over the next year in order to get awards out in 2020. And as a result, we don't plan or expect those conversations to come to you all in 2020. So it's something I just want to set out before we get into this next conversation. And I know, Robin, you had this question out to staff, which was, are the responsibilities around PCEF and this committee strictly related to just the awarding of grants? And I wanted to say clearly for the group as a whole, it's not. In the initiative language, it specifically states that the committee, you all, will make recommendations to the city council on changes to the law as necessary to ensure the effectiveness of the chapter in achieving the stated goals of implementing the city's climate action plan in a manner that supports social, economic, and environmental justice. So it's certainly squarely in your purview to be able to make any changes or recommend any changes to the code that governs PCEF in order to implement it effectively. With that, I know I'm taking a little bit of time back from the public comment. I want to give it back to you all, but I want to at least give you all an opportunity to ask any questions about that, if you have any.
This is Robin. Yeah, I have a follow-up question on that is, so far today, you staff have been leading the conversations and kind of how we're deliberating on things and setting the agenda. If at some point in the future, there is a recommendation to change or a desire to change, how do we start that process? Do we talk among ourselves, talk to you, do a petition?
I think it's a great question, and it comes to it over time. I mean, right now we don't have you all as a body do not have a chair, and as we develop bylaws, that will start to govern exactly how the agendas are set, and it certainly can come. The expectation is it would come from you all. I think I'm speaking to my thoughts right now as my opinion maybe, but there's a whole lot of learning and a whole lot of understanding how we implement the PCEF code, the initiative language as it was designed. Over time, we're going to learn where that design and that initiative language is perfectly is working as intended and where it may need some of those fixes. And so I think what our expectation is, as you all get onboarded and understand how you all function amongst each other, that you all will be developing bylaws and you all will inevitably have a chair, whether that's a rotating chair or a chair that sits for a period of time. And so that's the individual that we expect to be working with in order to set the agendas, but expect that chair is working with the body as a whole in order to do that as well.
I just want to make sure that I think for us as a committee, as we move forward, we are setting the precedent for how we sort of interpret the rules of PCEF. So I think I want us just to be really intentional as we move forward with the city to ensure that we are pretty intentional. I think once we set a precedent around how we interpret some of these rules, I think that's how future members will be interpreting that. So I think I just want us as founding members sort of just be cognizant of that. And I personally, I think have this expectation, moving forward, that the city does honor that component, that we are providing some of those recommendations over time, as we will be sort of most intimate with this process. So yeah.
Megan.
Yeah, I just feel like I want to state publicly that it's never a good thing when you hear the total grant funding is being reduced and pretty significantly. But I had been following some of the news coverage on it and the back and forth, and the language put out both by City Council but also by the PCEF activists and advocates. So I understand this decision, but I just figure we should state that it's not a good thing. So I hope City Council holds true to that, and in future changes or reductions in or changes in funding would be something we'd have a voice in. And if you hear of anything as staff, please bring it to our attention immediately.
Absolutely. I think you have that assurance from this city council that any future changes are coming by way of you all. Yeah. Okay. I don't want to take up any more time since that was off agenda, but I want to at least get that on the record.
All right, if we can, let's head over to what should have been a Post-it note, but it's just a big white piece of paper.
For those on the phone, we are going into our work session, so you will not be picking this up, and we will return.
Right? I'm gonna not use.
We will return at 6:55.
We're just trying to figure out a sort of a timely way to a way to, in not too much time, identify what's going to more of an opportunity for you all and
Should I eat more? Oh wow, is that on the record?
Yes.
Surprised nobody gave me
know.
feedback from the audience.
Since it's on the record.
we can check. All right, well, we're going to get started again. I think we'll just give one more minute for Maria to get back here. Not sure where she is. Okay. So before we move on to our presentations, I just wanted, the first of our presentations, I wanted to ask the committee if there were any proposals related to the work session or the conversation that we were just having over there to the left.
Yes, the committee has a proposal that we form 2 subcommittees, one on bylaws and one on the grants making process.
Second?
All right, well, per the decision-making process that we formed last time, it's 2/3 of those present with a minimum of 5 voting in favor of a proposal. So the proposal is to form 2 subcommittees, one on bylaws and one on grant process. So we need 5 since we round down. So all of those in favor, if we can just start by going around the table, give your name and indicate if you are voting for or against.
Andrea, yes.
Shanice, yes.
Jeff, yes.
Michael, yes.
Rainfeast, yes.
Robin, yes.
Megan, yes.
Maria, yes.
All right, and if we could, for those who are interested in serving on the bylaws subcommittee? This is Andrea, I volunteer.
This is Michael. I'd like to serve on the bylaws committee.
This is Rand Feast. I'd like to volunteer for the Grants Committee.
Robin for the Grants Committee.
Megan for the Grants Committee.
All right, well, thank you all very much. Robin?
Will the other committee members not here have an opportunity to join?
Absolutely. Yeah, we will let Faith know that she has an opportunity to sit on either of those subcommittees if she's interested.
And others can join in if they think about it and get excited.
Yes. If anybody gets really excited about some of the subcommittee work, they're welcome to join. So our first presentation is an outreach update, and that is, I'm going to invite June Reyes to come back up and share with you all some of the work that we've been doing recently.
Thanks, everyone. So, name is June Reyes, part of the PCEF startup team. And so, kind of wanted to just spend some time painting a picture of the event we had last Thursday, the Building Partnerships event, and then sort of invite Ron Feast and Megan to kind of provide some comments, and then kind of highlight some of the key takeaways and what's happening next in terms of outreach. And so, just to start, the purpose of Building Partnerships event, which was a structured networking event last Thursday, was to connect nonprofits, contractors, technical assistance providers who are interested in applying for PCEF this spring, to be able to connect with each other. And so what the day was like was we opened with a panel with two sort of stories of partnerships. And so one was Verde and DPAVE. And so they kind of shared their stories around what partnerships were for them, some challenges, some opportunities, and then we allowed folks to kind of have table discussions, facilitated table discussions about some of their thoughts around equitable partnerships. And for us, this was an important grounding in what PCEF was about and sort of long-term relationship building to do transformative projects through the PCEF funding. And then we ended with sector breakouts. So we broke out into the sort of the main funding bucket sectors. So in terms of who we invited and who came, so we were looking at, primary applicant, we were trying to recruit folks who might be primary applicants on a spring application. So those are nonprofits. And so of the folks who came, 73 said that they would be interested in being a primary applicant. There were probably 32 folks who indicated they would be a contractor, 38 technical assistance providers, and nonprofit partners are 59. So if you add up all those numbers, that's probably more than 130 because folks chose maybe, I might be a primary applicant or a nonprofit partner and a technical assistance provider. So those weren't mutually exclusive, those different roles. And so of the 130 participants, there were 92 unique organizations. We counted 24 frontline serving community organizations, which also included culturally specific organizations. So for example, Oregon Tradeswomen, ERCO, Mudbone Grown, Apano, Habitat for Humanity, Hacienda CDC, Home Forward, the Rosewood Initiative, various CDCs, other CDCs, Beyond Black, Black Food Sovereignty Council. So those are some of the folks who came. And of the contractors that were there, there were about 5 that were COVID certified as minority business or women-owned business. And so to be exact, it was at least 1 woman-owned business and the 4 had at least an MBE certification. And then the next slide. So of the 56 feedback forms we collected, we were able to get some demographic information from folks to see who came out, and also asked folks, how many connections did you come out with? So of the 56 folks, we had over 100, folks said that, they identified between, I think the question was like they either identified 0 folks to potentially collaborate with, 1 to 2 or 3 or more. And so there was over 100 potential collaborators identified. We also broke out demographics that are based on race, gender, age, and then again, there's what role folks might play on a project. Do any folks have any questions before we move on?
I'm curious about the 24 folks that were identified as frontline or community organizations. As we think about these demographics too, how many of those are reflected in the primary applicants? If you could estimate how many of those folks show up in that number? Is it all of them?
I don't have a good number for that, but I can definitely come back to you with that.
Beautiful, thank you.
All right. And so then I kind of wanted to see if Ranfis and Megan, if you all might want to reflect on the event with the other committee members, since you both were there.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank the staff for putting the event together, and I just want to thank all the community members and partners who came to the event. As a committee member, it's really valuable to go into each separate sort of group, because I think we were broken into residential, multifamily, green infrastructure. I think it's really valuable to sort of hear the feedback from folks. I think some of the things that I took away was just some clarity on some of the grant processes. Are these grants seed funding? Are they capital? Are they collaborative? Can they be used for planning? Is it one time or ongoing? So many, I think, more questions, and I think I sort of realized a challenge in trying to build this, but I think those are things that I think came up to me. Some clarifying questions from like definitions. So for many folks, it's what is green infrastructure? What is regenerative agriculture? And I think these are really good questions as we as a committee just be intentional in getting input from the community as we try to define these together.
I would like to echo Ranfis's thank you to the staff for putting on a really big event. I mean, that many people came, it was crowded and lots of good energy. And June, I know you've been doing lots of the event planning, and I appreciate your attention to who you're buying food from, and sort of that brings an element to PCEF that's really important. So it looked like a lot of work. So thank you for putting it on, down to thinking through the prompts for the table facilitators. And I arrived early and was there for the first half. And so I was able to join in the conversation that happened after the panel about equitable partnerships. And you already reported out a little bit, but I got to hear kind of one table's talk about some of the themes. And there were interesting conversations on what are the power relationships when there's a primary org and a partner org, and a big organization and a small one, and a frontline community and a more dominant mainstream nonprofit. And those are really relevant ones for us. So that was a good one to be a fly on the wall for. And then after the break, I joined briefly the food systems and green infrastructure breakout group, which was huge. It was like 45 people or something. I think much bigger maybe than expected. And that was both exciting, but also just made me reflect on what a difficult job we're going to have, because there's going to be a lot of applications. And I wasn't able to stay through the whole conversation. I heard people introduce themselves, and the beginning of some relationships and some challenging conversations started. So it was a good event, and yet it opened up a lot of questions that hopefully we'll be able to clarify as we start kind of releasing grant direction, including, again, because my area being green infrastructure and food systems. The discussion was very wide-ranging in the kinds of food systems people were talking about, and the kinds of green infrastructure, and the scale and the geographies of the things being mentioned. So just it kind of made me think about how we'll really need to be very clear about things so that we set ourselves up, so that we set applicants up fairly.
Thank you. So thank you all for sharing. I did also, a lot of the key takeaways that I have from the event are very consistent with what you both shared. So I'll just go over those quickly. And also, an important part of PCEF and the way that we want to do work and accountability is being able to also report out to folks, what we heard and what the committee is considering. So we'll be coming back with like just a smaller report of what folks had said and being able to and share that back with the folks who were at the event as a side note. So in terms of equitable partnership, some of the big takeaways folks echoed a lot in the table conversations were that partnership takes time. And so developing these relationships, they're going to take a lot of time depending on which group you were in. Some folks kind of knew everybody, like, oh yeah, I know most of these organizations. And some of them, folks were meeting each other for the first time. So that was a big component. What had really resonated with folks was when Alan had said in the panel discussion, justice costs money. And so how is that going to be accounted for? And the third thing was that in order to have equitable partnerships, there's a need for capacity building and education to be able to really engage fully. The second piece, in terms of the grant piece, so on the administrative side, a couple of things that were heard were concerns about the paperwork requirements. A lot of contractors had specifically talked about that. And the flexibility in metrics, especially when you're looking at different size nonprofits and different size projects that you're looking at. And then the last piece I'll share, since the sector feedback, I'm still processing that information, is in terms of grant criteria, the big question is, what can PCEF pay for? Can PCEF pay for staff positions, purchasing equipment, overhead, planning grants, pre-development, seismic, retrofits, and when we're talking about building justice into the fund, when we look at, for example, pre-apprenticeship programs, can PCEF also fund things like childcare and transportation? And so those were some of the swirling questions that we had. And I guess then the last thing I wanted to point out in terms of the grant criteria was also, how does geography factor in? So we're thinking about programs, for example, for workforce trainers who might be outside the Portland metro area who would be doing work in Portland. Folks were asking for some clarity. And another example would be, one of the organizations is out in Rockwood, serving both Gresham and Portland. And so how is that going to be considered by the committee? And so, like you both said, definitely coming out with a lot more questions, but they're also very consistent questions for you all to consider. And so I kind of wanted to end with sort of what the next steps look like. And a lot of that is thinking about how we're synthesizing this feedback and bringing it all back to you so that it can really shape the program that's being developed. James will talk about this next time, I think, but there's going to be some capacity building workshops that's out there, and there's going to be some specific outreach that'll be focused on the RFP launch once we have that date set and the timeline, more set. And then in terms of if we make it to summer 2020, we all been thinking about that. We're going to go back to thinking about, okay, what's possible with PCEF, and really thinking about just expanding the ideas out there and really trying to reach individuals in specific neighborhoods. And as a PCEF team, we're continue to have our one-on-one meetings and presentations, especially with frontline community organizations and participating in community events. And so if there's anything that you want to flag or you see opportunities to collaborate, please let us know. And as a team, we're more than willing to go, and would really value if there were connections, et cetera, that you all wanted to make, help make with us. Let's see. Good on time. Does anyone have any questions? Okay.
I just want to thank you for that overall framework or sort of assessment of the event. I just want to make sure that given that we only have like 5 MBE and WBE firms, that we find opportunities to go out to meet groups, whether it's at some of the minority contractor association groups that exist around the area. Just want to encourage that, and any opportunities to sort of hear from folks, whether they're pre-apprentices, current apprentices, any opportunities to sort of hear more about workers of color and some of their challenges in sort of diversifying the construction industry or broader industry, I think would be very, very useful.
So I know everybody said that there was more questions raised than answers, and that's fine. I'm just kind of curious from those that attended, were there any initial expectations set by people that, we ought to be aware of, and maybe not, but I'm just kind of curious.
I don't know if I fully understand expectations
What
set by who,
the people,
or
the people who
expectations.
the people who attended, right? Is there something that they communicated that they expect from this program, or from? I know it's a very vague question.
Not directly to me. When I get those questions, which I do, I usually just refer people directly to the city code, and I say, and then all of our public meetings are open, and stay tuned for public records about the grant. That's what I tell people, but I don't, at the event, it was more structured around encouraging partnerships, that kind of angle specifically, rather than the details of the grant. Without
If I can add to that, I do think that there was an expectation for more answers. I think, which was already a theme that brought up. I think it's just more answers around the grant framework. I think as we go into future meetings over time, I think the broader public will be interested to continue these events. But I think for what's for their use, I think in time, over time, having some more structure and answers will be very useful. And I think all the things we discussed in our work session.
Thank you.
No, Michael? Well, I will say that just having listened, this is Katie, having listened and facilitated one group and participated in kind of just listening at another group, two expectations that I did hear from several people were, one, that there be budgets that allow for social equity and justice work in ways that they have not seen in grants before, grants focused on carbon reduction and climate change mitigation activities. So I do think that is an expectation that was voiced by a number of folks in the room, and then also an expectation that the committee maintain focus on the equity component of the program and create systems of accountability to make sure that that doesn't get kind of forgotten. Those, I think, were two clear expectations I heard several times.
Great. Well, before we invite our next person up, I did bring some of the leftover programs we had, which kind of gives some of the directory of folks who are there. It'll be updated, but it just gives you a sense of kind of what was going on and what folks left the room with. And so I'll hand them out. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you, June. So now we're going to start our presentations on residential energy efficiency and renewable energy. The first presenters are from the Energy Trust of Oregon, Michael Colgrave and Amber Cole. And if I could ask you both to... Is there three of you? Oh, okay. Thought there was three. There's just one.
And while we get situated, Jay, my colleague there, has got a packet for everybody.
And do you want me to advance your slides?
I'm happy to do it if you want. Should we just switch spots?
Yes, let's just switch seats. That way you can be in charge of your own thing here.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Colgrove, and I'm the Executive Director for Energy Trust of Oregon. I am joined here this evening by a few staff, including, so I think we got Jenny Hall, Mark Wyman, Tyrone Henry, and Jay Ward, who have come to also be able to answer any of the tough questions that I can't answer from you all. First and foremost, let me thank you for inviting us here this evening, and to commend the committee and the City of Portland staff for your dedication to ensuring that all Portlanders have equitable access to the environmental and economic benefits which energy efficiency and renewable energy can bring. As you all work to implement what I think is an historic initiative that will absolutely advance Portland's clean energy and equity, I'm here to kind of give you a brief overview of who Energy Trust is this evening, and ultimately to start the thinking around how we might be here and available to help support your goals and the city's goals in the work of bringing the Portland Clean Energy Fund funding to folks. So this is a quick presentation outline. I understand I have probably just shy of 15 minutes now, so I'm not going to go into this in detail. I'm just going to jump right in. A little bit about who we are. We are an independent nonprofit organization. We were established in 2002, and we now serve most utility customers throughout Oregon, as well as gas customers in Southwest Washington. Here in Portland, we serve customers of PGE, Pacific Power, and Northwest Natural. Our purpose is to help utility customers and communities reduce their costs and realize additional benefits by saving energy and using renewable resources. We were charged with this purpose by the Oregon Legislature and Public Utility Commission starting in 1999, because basically energy efficiency is the cheapest resource available to utilities and their customers. Our job is to get as much cost-effective energy efficiency as we can, which helps ensure that all utility customers pay less for their energy. We also have a mission to support clean, renewable energy, which helps reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. And together, the work that we support with our customers helps to avoid carbon emissions and related climate change impacts. Through a broad range of customer-focused programs and services, which I'll touch on in a moment, we provide information, cash incentives, et cetera, to spur energy-saving actions and adoption of small-scale solar, biopower, and hydropower. Our participants, our customers, are renters, homeowners, commercial and industrial businesses, farmers and ranchers, builders of new homes, developers, city, county, and state governments, nonprofit organizations, pretty much everyone who pays into our funding. And lastly, for the past 17 years, our results have been largely measured in units of electricity and gas savings and electricity generated. Although our programs also help deliver additional important non-energy benefits, such as lower utility bills, healthier homes, reduced carbon emissions, better air quality, and local economic activity. Our vision is that everyone benefit from clean and affordable energy, and there is more to accomplish, more to do to accomplish this vision, and that's why we're here and very eager to work with you all. So this is a high-level view of how Energy Trust works with our customers, our contractors, and a variety of partners. So I'm going to start sort of here at the top. Customers of all 5 utilities pay a small, dedicated percentage of their utility bills to support energy efficiency and renewable energy services and programs in Oregon and Southwest Washington. Energy Trust uses these funds to then design and deliver programs and services that help customers invest in improvements that save electricity and natural gas, or use renewable resources like solar. To reach and serve those customers, we work with thousands of small businesses and other partners located in communities across the state. These are lighting, heating and cooling contractors, electricians. We work with hardware stores, we work with dollar stores, community-based organizations, others. We basically work with them, we train them so that they have an understanding of how to access our incentives on behalf of their customers, and they basically work to inform and enroll their customers as part of their own sales and services. So in addition to working with a contractor or partner, there are actually a number of other ways that our customers are served by our programs, sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly. For instance, they may purchase an energy efficient appliance or a piece of equipment at Home Depot or Lowe's, or they might purchase light bulbs at their local hardware or grocery store. Many times these products, we have worked with those retailers to help discount those products and bring them at a lower cost to their customers. Some renters, for instance, may live in buildings whose building owners have participated in our multifamily programs, or they may live in new buildings whose developer went through our new buildings program to make it more energy efficient than code would require. So we basically support all of these customer actions through information. We provide upfront discounts and incentives or other types of rebates. Customers generally who take action see lower energy bills and benefits there. And really, just one quick thing, what this graphic doesn't necessarily point out is our evaluation process and other accountability measures that are used to count up and publicly report the savings and generation and other benefits that we achieve working with our customers. It also does not speak to the role of our 3 stakeholder advisory councils in guiding our program strategies. Those 3, one is focused on our energy efficiency efforts, one on our renewable energy programs, and now a third on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and helping us better meet the needs of our underserved customers. So we wanted to talk just a little bit about where our funds come from and our oversight from the Oregon Public Utility Commission. I mentioned that the funds are paid in and there's a variety of ways that Energy Trust then invests those funds back out to reach and serve customers. We basically have 3 categories of revenue. First, we receive a portion, this blue wedge here on the chart, of the mandated 3% charge on PGE and Pacific Power electric customer utility bills. That was established in state law in 1999. Second, we receive additional funding from utilities as approved by the Oregon Public Utility Commission to enable more energy saving programs, services, and incentives for both electric and gas. And third, we can and do receive a small amount of funds via direct contracts for services. The primary example for this right now is the new, we're currently working on Oregon's new community solar program as a subcontractor to the primary energy solutions there. So about 75% of the funds that we receive are specifically dedicated to electric energy efficiency, about 17% dedicated to gas, and 8% dedicated to small scale renewable. Since we opened our doors in 2002, Energy Trust has invested $1.7 billion in customer projects, which have saved around $3.4 billion on customer utility bills. Those past investments are expected to continue to save, totaling $7.6 billion on customer utility bills over time. In Portland specifically, Energy Trust has invested almost $354 million. Of that, about $153 million has gone to saving energy at 165,000 residential sites here in the city. And yet, as we all know, these results are not sufficient to meet the needs that our city demonstrates. We know that we haven't directly reached and served all customers, and I do want to kind of come back and touch on that later. So I mentioned just providing a little bit of explanation of the type of oversight and requirements that our funding comes with. We're overseen by the Oregon Public Utility Commission, or OPUC, and we're accountable to them for compliance through a grant agreement. One of our requirements, one that is actually in state law, is that we invest in cost-effective energy efficiency. Cost-effective means that the benefit of a project exceed its costs, and that criteria is met in order for Energy Trust to provide incentives towards it. This test is intended to guide the investment of ratepayer funds into projects that will pay for themselves over time. This ensures a rate of return to the customer, but also to the utilities and to all utility ratepayers. The test looks at all of the costs of the project, but only actually includes some of the benefits, and typically those that are most easily quantifiable. The OPUC oversees our implementation of the cost-effective requirement and determines what we can count as benefits and costs. The OPUC can and does grant exceptions for a number of investments for specific purposes, such as, for instance, pilots that have a good chance of delivering cost-effective savings in the future. The Commission also sets annual performance measures for Energy Trust, such as a minimum energy acquisition target per year. It provides administrative and program support cost caps, and most recently this year adopted 4 new diversity, equity, and inclusion performance metrics for the organization. We report quarterly and annually on our results to the Commission and biannually to the Oregon Legislature. Okay, so earlier I mentioned the types of customers that we serve. They really kind of break down into these 3 categories, or the types of the programs that we offer. We focus on residential customers, which includes our renters, homeowners, property managers. We have a second bucket for commercial and industrial customers. Those would include institutions like schools and hospitals. They would include office and apartment buildings, food service, food banks, manufacturing, indoor ag, etc. And lastly, we have a bucket for renewable energy, and that is where you would find programs to support rooftop solar, small hydropower, and biogas. I don't have time to provide details on all of our program offerings, although the packet that we provided does start to give you some idea of the types of incentives that we offer. I would like to quickly mention, however, a few partnerships with some other entities on emerging program approaches that are helping us reach out to more customers in Portland. This year, we were pleased to partner with St. Vincent de Paul, Multnomah County, Oregon Housing and Community Services, Verde, and Living Cully in helping residents of the Oakleaf Manufactured Home Park replace 21 aging homes with new energy-efficient ones. Given recent city and state support for preserving and upgrading manufactured homes, we think that there's tremendous opportunity here to do more. There are 170,000 manufactured homes in Oregon. Of those, 110,000 were built before 1995. We're also partnering with Community Energy Project and with Verde on some specific initiatives to install energy-saving heat pump hot water heaters and ductless heat pumps for low-income customers. We're also pleased to be working alongside the Clean Energy Project to support the launch of Oregon's new community solar program. Lastly, on the community side, we've been working with community-based organizations to explore their ideas for low and moderate income solar programs through a grant program that is a statewide effort. Okay, so I mentioned one of the hopes of coming in front of you tonight would be to think about some ways that our organization can work to support the goals that you and the city have for the Clean Energy Fund. So really, as you continue to think about your work of starting up and operationalizing the Portland Clean Energy Community Benefits Fund, we stand ready as a resource if and when you think there's a helpful intersection between our organizations and what you're trying to accomplish. We are here to support you any way we can, and we've had good conversations with city staff and work to really try to deliver that message to them too. Without knowing all the rules and procedures that you're going to establish for distributing funds, we're not really identifying any specific ways to work together right now. But with that in mind, we did consider here sort of a few ways that we feel we could be helpful to both the committee and to staff. One of those ways is through information and analysis. We do have data that helps us understand areas of high energy use, and we are enhancing our ability to match various data sets to better inform, better understand where customers are underserved. As we gain insights into this information, we're very happy to share that with you all. Another way that we might work together is project validation and evaluation. Depending on how you decide to track results, Energy Trust does have experience in various methods for project validation and evaluation, and we'd like to coordinate to really understand how we might support your efforts, or at least avoid duplicative efforts for projects that tap both of our funding sources. Helping inform trade and workforce opportunities could be another way for our entities to work together, because we understand, we have an understanding of some elements of emerging energy savings and solar opportunities. We are often aware of where there are workforce development needs. A quick example is understanding that new heat pump water heater technologies are going to require plumbers to learn how to install this equipment. So it's insights like that that, again, we're very happy to discuss and share with you. But working with the committee and staff is not necessarily the only areas that we've identified that we might be of support. We're also thinking about how we might be able to help grant applicants. Again, this will come into better focus, we think, once you have a better understanding of how the fund rules will work. But for now, we sort of see these 4 potential areas where we might be of use to future applicants. Direct support for projects that deliver energy savings or renewable generation and align with our program requirements. This direct support usually is in the form of project incentives and technical assistance, or it could be in the form of early project development assistance, similar to what we're beginning to offer for community solar projects. We have had recent experience working with community partners to help them apply for solar grants, and we are thinking about how we can do more of this type of work to build capacity in other organizations while we're accomplishing our savings and generation goals. So as we understand your rules, we will stay alert to the various opportunities that are presented. And depending on how you structure the grant making, there also may be ways to consult with program proposers to help them either navigate PCEF and Energy Trust funds for greatest community benefit. We'll continue to actively listen and remain available to discuss these opportunities as community benefit funds are developed, as your rules are developed. About 2 minutes? Yep, great. So the last few slides actually here are just some stats on Portland's housing makeup. Our most recent data indicates that there's about 252,000 residential sites here in Portland, not including multifamily apartment buildings. So those single-family homes, duplexes, and fourplexes are powered and heated by a variety of energy sources. According to Multnomah County housing stock data, less than half are electrically heated, a slight majority are heated by natural gas, and a smaller number heat with oil and wood heat. Of course, electricity is the fuel used to power lights and appliances. With that breakdown and looking at the quality of the housing stock, this chart here shows Portland housing stock by age, includes all types of residential housing. The green line there in the middle represents 1983. That is the year that residential building codes were adopted. So you can see a significant portion of the residential housing in Portland was built before we even had those residential codes. All of this leading, of course, to the idea that there is an incredible amount of potential for energy savings in the residential sector here alone. This last slide here talks just a little bit about some of the work that Energy Trust and the City of Portland have done. As I mentioned, since 2002, we have served about 66% of all of the residential homes here in the city. We've served about 25% of multifamily sites. And just keep in mind, of course, that this could be as extensive as incorporating solar electric power into a home, or as modest as installing energy efficient lighting measures. So this doesn't mean we've done deep energy retrofits in 2/3 of the homes, obviously, but this means that in some way or another we've touched that home or they've worked with us. So with that, I think I will leave it and turn it over to my colleague Charity
I think before we do that.
Oh, do we want to do
have
questions?
about
Okay.
10 minutes if you wanted to, if you had any questions or
Okay.
clarifications right now for Energy Trust of Oregon before we move on to the next presentation, which is from Multnomah County Weatherization.
Oh, sorry.
Robin?
Hi, thank you. This is very insightful. Based on your understanding of PCEF, can you maybe describe at a very high level how PCEF funds could best complement the Energy Trust funds to maybe address a need or a concern that you guys are not able to address?
Yeah, actually, there's a great example on the last slide that I didn't really get to that talks about sort of exactly an area where we are a little challenged to using our funding. There's a general misalignment in the multifamily space called the split incentive, where renters in a building tend to own or tend to pay the bill for equipment in the apartment that they rent, but the owner owns it, right? So you may have either a furnace or a hot water heater in your apartment. You probably have a refrigerator or other appliances, and you don't own them as a renter. The building owner does. And in order to make the economic argument of changing out and putting the more efficient appliances in, we usually rely on bill savings as an argument to that. But when you're the owner of a building like that, you don't see those bill savings. Your tenant does, right? So addressing that split incentive has quite frankly been sort of a utility funded program's Achilles heel for a long time, trying to really figure out how to work to incent and motivate building owners to change out this type of equipment so that their renters realize the energy savings is a really valuable and quite frankly big missing gap in some of the space. We've worked with renters through, we have energy saving kits, which might provide low cost measures. So like replacing all the lighting, for instance, in an apartment is one quick way to get renters to realize savings benefits. If they do have their own hot water heater, putting low flow devices right on their showers or their water faucets is another quick and easy way. But those beyond that, you have to start replacing appliances, and that really requires a lot of cooperation and motivation from building owners. Really easy to work with mission focused managers or owners, but when you get into some of the more private stock, it's a challenge to get those building owners to work with you.
So you're talking about the situation where you have a 50-year-old furnace that works, heats up the unit, right? Landlord doesn't want to replace it because it works.
It still works.
But the renter is paying 3 times, 4 times what they should be if they got efficient.
That is absolutely correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you. That's a great question.
Michael?
How have income levels affected who uses Energy Trust for even ownership purchases of solar installs, new water heaters? I know that for myself that, I have a furnace that's ancient, but I don't have $4,000 to throw down for a new server, even with, it's going to run until it dies. Because I can pay the extra $40 a month in heat. I can't pay the upfront costs. So do you mostly serve people that have the ability to pay upfront costs? Or does Energy Trust for actual, not for light bulbs and low flow faucets, but
Lower cost measures, right?
actual.
Yep. For like appliance and equipment replacements. Yeah. So I brought this slide back up to point out, so this blue wedge, which is the public purpose charge portion of the funding, this is a 3% charge that's on all of our bills. And when the legislature passed this bill back in '99, they diverted part of that 3% collection to Oregon Housing and Community Services and kind of made them the prime on low income work. So through their weatherization assistance programs or their affordable housing programs, they blend some of this public purpose charge money with other state and federal funding, and really were given the focus for serving low income. Now, we have focused more than on sort of the moderate income level and really trying to think about how we can design programs that work to meet basically that first cost barrier that you just mentioned. One of the programs that we offer is, first we offer a Savings Within Reach program, which provides a higher incentive. But even then, we rarely pay 100% of the cost of the improvement. So we also have an on-bill recovery program, which allows the homeowner or business owner to finance, it's income eligible, and it allows the building owner, the homeowner to finance it on their electric bill or their gas bill, depending on what it is. So the idea there is that the monthly fee you pay to pay that loan back is actually offset by the utility savings that you now see as a result of using the more efficient equipment. So this is just an example of a few of the types of work that we do. But I will say, I think this also goes back to Robin's question in that that's a really important place to look at the intersection between what you guys can potentially do with Clean Energy Fund funding and where Energy Trust's restrictions kick in is how do we help building owner or homeowners cover the difference in the cost of the work, right? And I think that's a huge place for exploration.
Michael, did you have something that you wanted to? Oh, that was just leftover. Okay. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't an extra. So I think Megan and then Ranfis, and then we're going to move on to the next presentation. Megan?
I was just curious what you said you had developed DEI metrics. Can you just state those maybe?
Yeah, so the ones that the Public Utility Commission adopted earlier this year were very sort of focused on some efforts that we have that were kind of a subset of a larger DEI operations plan that includes 10 goal areas of effort. All of our diversity, equity, inclusion work focuses and drives us towards better serving underserved customers, which we identify as communities of color, low-income customers, and rural customers. The 4 metrics that the Commission adopted earlier this summer include greater adoption of the use of an equity lens when we're making internal decisions like budgeting and other significant decisions like that. The adoption or holding at least one, but probably more than one, rural workshop next year in 2020 to meet with rural stakeholders and customers to better understand their engagement with our programs. The other 2, this is where I'm gonna fail with just trying to do this off the top of my head. Anybody back there remember? No. Oh, right. One was trade allies thing. I mean, I can get this for you too. One was around trade allies and increasing the number of MWBE trade ally firms that work with so the trade allies is that network of contractors I mentioned earlier that tend to work more directly with homeowners and customers. So we've been working with organizations like NAMCO and AWAMI and others to identify additional MWBE firms and those that sort of declare as minority or women owned, to bring them into the network and train them on our program so that they can serve. The last one is going to drive me crazy that I can't remember it, but I'm happy to get it back to you.
Well, I hope this is a part of a longer engagement because I think there's a lot of valuable things here to learn from Energy Trust work in this space. I think one probably larger topic will be just sort of looking at some of the challenges and barriers for a cost-effective model. But I think one question that I do want to sort of ask is, since we touched upon it, is just what are some lessons learned around diversifying some of the contracting firms, the MWESB firms? Like that's something that I think is a charge of ours in terms of setting out some goals, but it seems like there's some real challenges, and just love to hear if there what any lessons have been learned so far.
Yeah, and we definitely have some folks on staff that I think would be very happy to sort of sit down and really talk about what they've been faced with this. I think one of the, I don't want to say challenges, but one of the areas we're really focused on is not just identifying the firms, but helping them either by the types of business development incentives that we're offering, and we are offering now sort of a higher level of business development incentives for MWBE firms. Part of it is to both motivate them and give them the ability to, it takes some time and effort to come in and learn how our programs work, right? And learn what the paperwork requirements are, for instance. As much as we do try to streamline and keep things down, there is a learning curve effort there. It's true for all new contractors who come into our programs, but what we find in this space is a greater need to just sort of raise awareness of the opportunity for these types of firms. That's one area that I know that we've worked with. Like I said, I think I mentioned Awami and NAMCO and others. That has been sort of our first and foremost effort, is really just trying to expand the network and the types of folks that we're working with. Hey, sir. This actually, yeah.
Hi, I'm Tyrone
knows
Henry.
much more.
And I was hired to work with MWESBs and now SDVs, Service Disabled Veterans. I have 20 years of experience of working with MWESBs. We have relationships with the Portland Business Development Group as well, also Latino Built, and other ethnic chambers, the Native American, the African American, and the Filipino American Chamber of Commerce. And so we will be collaborating with those organizations and extending our tentacles, if you will, to the MWESB SDV contracting community.
I guess just to close out, that's great to hear. And I think just, I think given some of the challenges in the past, I think that's something that I think just want to see how we can sort of partner and elevate that throughout the next year. But thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
No, great. So thank you so much for this opportunity. We had to really try to think about what to put in the 15 or 20 minutes to give you the overview. I really do hope this is just the beginning of conversation. And like I've said, we've mentioned to staff a number of times that we remain at the ready to work with you and to help try to figure out whatever we need to do to make our efforts streamline and coexist easily for our customers. And this is obviously the first time we had a chance to now meet with you and talk to you about it. So please consider this an open invitation and welcome to give me a holler anytime you need to. We stand ready to support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right. I'd like to invite Jose Flores from Multnomah County Weatherization. And do you have one other person with you? Is it just going to be you? Oh, and Gary. And did you want? You need to get your video queued up. Yeah. Okay.
Committee active moment.
Here, let me pass this. I'll do it. You're gonna get the video queued up.
Oh, you already got it there?
Yeah. So the computer has been saying that the internet connection is kind of funky. So hopefully.
I got a USB.
I think it should work. At the end.
Yeah, just the last couple minutes.
Maybe we should show the video right here.
Okay.
And then you can talk about all this.
So good evening. My name is Jose Flores with Multnomah County Weatherization Program, and I'm gonna let my coworker Gary start us with.
Well, we can all stare at the beautiful children up on the wall. Yeah, my name is Gary Walsworth. I'm with the Multnomah County Weatherization Program. I'm the program specialist. Jose, the modest one here, is our lead inspector for our program. I passed out there's just a brief flyer, and the brochure is kind of something that we just use out in the community to talk about our program. I'm going to try to touch on a lot of the stuff that's just in there. I guess bear with me that I'm going to try not to just read through it, but I don't want to miss some of the important points that we brought to share with you today. The Multnomah County Weatherization Program is dedicated to serving most of the vulnerable populations in the county, including low-income, elderly, veterans, disabled, and communities of color. The program is part of the Department of County Human Services, and often, I guess, this is where a lot of people don't understand where we fit in. just look at this as a technical kind of program. We go out and weatherize homes, but there's a reason why we're in a social service agency. We are a social service program, and we're part of the Community Action Agency. My manager is the director of Multnomah County's Community Action Agency. And they're dedicated to fighting poverty. In our program, that's how we look at our program. Excuse me, it's a poverty fighting program. It directs at things like mobility and school movement and lots of things that people, when we can reduce their dependency on their power bill and they don't have to leave to go to another location to get out of paying their PG bill and now move to PPL territory and start a new life. We see a lot of people like that, and we'd really like to put an end to that because you're dragging your children and it's not good for anybody. So we've had good success at being able to do that because we can reduce people's power bills anywhere from 25 to 45%. The weatherization program is an integral part of this strategy to reduce poverty and has for over 30 years experience here in Multnomah County. The program helps to reduce home energy usage and greenhouse gases and provides healthy homes for residents of the city and the county. From their perspective, from a low-income household perspective, these services reduce utility costs, help keep residents safe, healthy, and warm, and comfortable in their home. This is accomplished through a comprehensive home weatherization and energy education program, all for low-income residents. It's all free to them, living in single-family homes, mobile homes, and apartments. The program works from a whole house perspective rather than a selective measures. So we generally attack someone's home and try to do every possible energy saving measure that we can and not look at, replacing just a furnace and moving on. It can be kind of expensive. We don't serve as many homes that way, but they get the benefit of complete weatherization project. The weatherization program prioritizes the low-income, elderly, disabled, families with children, and veterans. I did a study before we did this. We weren't really prepared to see the last 3 years, and 52% of all the people that we've served were from communities of color over the last 3 years. 200% of the federal poverty levels are income qualification. That's higher than some of the programs in the county, but not by a whole lot. So it is restrictive as to who we can serve. You have to meet that level or below, and we don't have any flexibility with that. And Jose, we have a little short video that we'd like to share with you.
You may have to point your speaker down at it.
Oh. It's the high-tech, low-tech.
At the beginning, the house, we tried to paint it and make it look better, but it wasn't warm. It was always cold, always. They were getting sick every month. They have asthma and bronchitis because the house was really cold. To put insulation around the house, we did the quotes 2 years ago, and it was over $18,000 to do that, and it's just no way we can afford that.
When I walked inside the house, right away I noticed how cold it was. The walls, everything felt so cold. But we have a process where we actually sit down and talk to the people to find out what exactly are their concerns about the current conditions of the house. But then I start assessing the household itself. And what I learned about it is that they were empty of any insulation. Now, because we insulated the floor, we insulated the walls, and capped it with insulation up in the attic, because of that, you need to use less energy of using your furnace and everything because the heat will stay here a lot longer and the furnace has to come up a lot less.
I don't think Andre would appreciate that. You stare at him. He's really a nice guy, but I don't think we need to look at him.
The internet here is not the greatest. be a while.
Yeah.
You could tell us the ending.
Yeah, you might want to just.
If you switch off HD, would that help? Right now it's on HD. When you maximize the screen, the little option comes up.
We may be confusing the computer here. If you don't mind, we can send this out to the committee, send a link out to
Sure.
the committee, and they can all watch when they have a more.
Less than before.
Oh, now we're back.
They haven't get sick since they came and fixed the house. They haven't get sick at all. I haven't even walked into the hospital, into the ER. Now we can concentrate more on them than try to cover this window, try to cover this, especially on when it's snow outside. And last year was bad, really, really bad. And we tried to protect them. They were walking like this because they have layers and layers and layers of clothes. Now they can be comfortable, walk in the house comfortable.
One of the reasons we really like this particular video, and we have another one, this one's hot off the press, hasn't even been posted to our website yet, but it's been difficult to quantify kind of health-related issues when it comes to weatherization. A lot of people have attempted to do that at various times. We don't have the resources sometimes to do it, but clearly from this video, and we get this back from our clients all the time, this lady was taking her children to the ER 2 or 3 times a year. And that has not happened since we weatherized her home. And we've had several clients who come back with that kind of report. And of course, makes us feel good. But I guess the bottom line is that by doing the kind of work we do, it's not just saving them on their energy bill, but it's providing some health-related benefits as well.
Yeah, and as Gary mentioned earlier, we approached the house with a whole house approach. So, the weatherization, the health and safety is one of the big concerns of the program. So we look at our inspectors are trained on identify all those health and safety issues in the house, like electrical, asbestos, lead-based paint, so mold and mildew. So we address all those things. We are not, our funding does not allow us to remediate those, but we can kind of like prevent from keep going, right? That's one of those things. But we do the weatherization, insulation on the floor, the walls, the attic, windows, air seal, duct seal. We install heating systems. We use the most efficient systems out there that are new on the market. So try to help the clients save more energy as much as they can.
I guess I would also like to point out, we do replace appliances in the home. We replace a lot of refrigerators. We've been working with a partnership with the City of Portland Water Bureau to work on replacing washing machines. We do work with them too for water conservation as well, for toilet replacement. We do the water heaters, furnace repair and replacement, which is considered just part of whole house weatherization, all those items. Energy Trust was just mentioning that, talking about some of their partners. One of our partners is the Energy Trust. And as they proudly shared the Oak Leaf project, we too were proud to be part of that project. And, we did replace 21 units there. We were able to provide funding for that. We also, they were actually replacing another one that we're working on right now. And we're engaged in another partnership with the Energy Trust in another park that we're looking forward to. That's going to be a little more complicated, but some of those things are a little out of our scope. We don't have a statewide presence. We're just here in Multnomah County. but we make attempts to partner with whoever we can. You know, we're partnering with the Housing Bureau and Water Bureau, Energy Trust, Unlimited Choices, Living Collie, lots of different agencies to provide lots of different services that fill some of the gaps that Jose talked about. The mobile home replacement's a tough one for us because they're expensive to do, and there's not a way for us to cover the entire cost of doing that. So you have to partner with other agencies to make that happen. We have really highly trained inspectors. I guess I'm, pretty proud of our agency and say that I don't think there's another program in the state that has any more highly trained people than we do. We have 6 inspectors to go out and do the work. We inspect every single project that we touch, and make sure that we don't pay the bill for our contractors unless it passes our inspection. And it's a pretty high standard that we're holding those to. That some of them in the paper talks about what that might entail. They constantly have to go get recertified on a whole variety of things all the time. We do a pretty comprehensive energy education program as well. We partner with other agencies in the community, like the City of Portland, their Fix-It fairs. We do Sun School presentations. We go out and we provide energy education for every home that we audit. Every multifamily project that we do, we provide energy education for the tenants as well. And anybody we audit gets a pretty comprehensive energy saving kit of items that they also get. Some of the people, anybody who attends one of our workshops also gets that as well. I guess I would, this would be a point where I could say that, talk to some of the things that, your program is fairly new to our landscape as far as, I was interested in hearing some of the feedback from the people who attended your event. We have some of those same questions, it's like, okay, you got all this money, but how does somebody apply? Where does it go? What can you do with it? All those same kind of questions. And then how can we assist? So, some of our thinking on that has been kind of, I guess, in more general terms. We too, like the Energy Trust mentioned for them, there's gaps. We do provide services to people under that 200% limitation, but up to our funding levels. And so that's always an issue. There's only so many people you can serve. We serve about 300 homes a year. And that's pretty much capped by the dollar amount. That's about how much we get. So we don't end up with much money rolling over for the next time. It's a constant flow. We usually start the next year with 50, 60 homes in the works, planning on next year's money to pay for that. The biggest gap we see in there is that group right above us. I too, in that same situation, I've seen the Energy Trust material. I was talking to one of their staff. I looked at the form and I can get $1,000 to do this gas furnace, but I can't come up with the $4,000 to do that. I guess I'm less concerned about that from my world, and when I do, it's that people that are right over our 200% limit to, maybe up close to where I am, because those are the people I talked to. One of those this weekend, we did an outreach out in Cully neighborhood, and we're trying to get people to maybe finance a mobile home replacement. And when I talked to her, I said, well, there's somebody out there that would talk to you about this from Energy Trust. And she just pointed to her income thing on my application and said, not interested. And yeah, she makes $855 a month. She's not going to finance a mobile home replacement. So, nor is she going to pay for $4,000 for a furnace. So that is a real huge gap for us. And it's really, when somebody's $20 over our income level, it's like, where do they go? So that is a huge issue for us in trying to find services for that group. Like I mentioned, we have been doing this for 30 years, and we do have really extremely high skilled and certified individuals who are good at energy efficiency and inspections and training. That's always an area that we would be interested in exploring in any kind of partnership, either with people who are directly applying for these grants, or at any point with people on this committee as well. And any part of that, we've been working with the low-income community, and that entire time, that is the entirety of who we serve. There's, I guess I can't think of a time where we actually went over that. Even we do shelters, we've done other things, but it's always for people who meet that. Even multifamily, the only time, we only have to qualify 66% of the people in a multifamily building to do the work. So presumably there are people over income end up getting some of our services. But generally speaking, they have to meet that criteria. You know, any kind of partnerships for direct service, we'd be open to any of that kind of thing. We have contractors that, essentially we're a contractor and we subcontract this service out to the community. We have plumbers and electricians and weather station contractors that are under contract to us to do this service. So they're the ones who actually do the work. We just do the energy audits and then do the inspections at the end. And then this gap, the other gap is the healthy home gap. You know, we can do so much. We can seal up a home, put a bath fan in, do lots of things, but we can't replace the carpet. If somebody's got asthma, there's nothing we can do. That's somebody else is going to have to be able to do that. And there's lots of things like that where people have chemicals in their home. People have, you know, carpet that needs to be replaced. And that's just, we just don't have the funding. Our funders just don't allow us to do that kind of thing. So that would be another huge gap that hopefully could be addressed. I mean, we made a big difference in this family's home just by doing the work we do, but there's no telling whether or not they had carpet or, you know, bad dishwashing chemicals under the sink that we might have told them it's not a good idea, but, you know, be the end of that. So, do you have anything to add, Jose?
Well, we try to collaborate on, we get like 4 different funds from the state and some from local utilities here, like Northwest Natural. So we try to, you know, put all those funds together in order to help those families the best that we can while we are at the house. We have a training center that trains our contractors, so they are fully trained and they know the you know, the specifications to do this kind of work.
We do try to use the training dollars that are available to us as a county and use it for our contractors as well. Send them to conferences and do other things like that as best we can. So.
Denise, did you have a question?
First, I just want to say thank you for sharing a little bit about this work and the lenses and the populations that are being focused on. I think there is some space for us to maybe think about some connections with our work, and in our previous you know, session or presentation, folks were grappling with the idea of renters and owners and how we might identify or select folks. So I'm curious about hearing how you reflect on supporting these communities in terms of negotiating consent from owners to do the work and how that might look for folks who are renters. And I think, yeah, that's the question I'll share for now.
You know, I've been with this program for a long time, and before that I worked in energy assistance. Only one time have I ever had a landlord not refuse to sign our application form for doing the renovations. They're getting free work. Our program is all about the applicant. So they must be a low-income person that applies, renter or not. But if they're a renter, you know, we need permission to go in and do work on somebody else's home. And like only one time in all that time has somebody not signed to give us permission to do that. And when we do multifamily, where we're doing renters, the building owner has to sign some pretty severe documents. We have a lien on their property and lots of things that go on there. So it's way different. You know, we consider that kind of the win-win-win. You know, the tenants win because we're going to reduce their electric bill or energy bill. The owner obviously wins because we're going to spend, you know, lots of money improving his property, and then we all win because we're going to reduce the you know, the carbon footprint. So we've just never had that difficulty, and we will replace. We pretty much deal with renters the same way we deal with homeowners when it comes to, particularly for single family. So they're going to get the same kinds of things. Now, if it's something that a landlord is supposed to be doing as part of their landlord, we have put pressure on a couple of them at times to, you know, we won't replace a stove, for instance, but if their stove doesn't work, we're not going to go replace their refrigerator and everything else, and we're going to go in and do what we can. And so so far, everybody's always taking care of business. We've not had that problem.
Yeah, they need to have those units what's the word I'm looking for? Like, they cannot raise the rent,
Right.
right, for a certain amount of time.
Right.
For us to go.
Or sell their property.
Yeah.
Is that done through the lien?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shanice, did you have a follow-up?
No, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Andre or Andrea?
This is Andrea. I'm curious about how much money on average you spend on each of those 300 households.
Well, it keeps going up and up, the average, but this last time, when I did the average, we are about $15,000, somewhere around there, in average per household.
And it's a little different based on their fuel source, whether it's
Yeah.
natural gas or Pacific Power or PG, but pretty close to that amount overall. We spent a lot less and we spent a lot more.
Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you
Yeah.
both for coming and sharing with the committee, and I'm sure we'll be working with you in the future.
Thank you.
All right, so we have one more presentation, and that is Community Energy Project Charity. Still here.
And I have slides as well.
Do you want to drive,
Yeah, I'll
drive
do
your own
that.
ship here?
That'll be
Okay.
easier than me saying touch the button.
Mhm.
There we go.
There.
So just advance it with, oh, that's. Just the arrows. Just the arrows.
It does have kind of a funky slow. Just don't hit it multiple times, just give it a minute, yeah.
One, okay. Hello, I'm Charity Fain with Community Energy Project, and I also just wanted to thank everyone for inviting us to speak here today. It's really exciting. I've been working on the Capacity Building Committee for almost a year now, I think, so it's really exciting to be here and to see all of you in person. Michael, I worked a little bit with on that committee, and now he says he's not allowed to come. No. But it's really exciting for me to share with you more about what we do at Community Energy Project. We were founded in 1979, so we've been around for 40 years. This is our just finishing our 40th anniversary. And at CEP, we believe that everyone deserves a safe, healthy, and efficient home regardless of income. We were started during the energy crisis in the late 70s, and we started doing do-it-yourself weatherization workshops in people's living rooms in North and Northeast. And we still do those workshops. And today I wanted to give a little bit of like who we are, but also talk a bit about why we keep energy efficiency as part of our core. So what's kind of some bigger picture issues around energy efficiency, and then more details about who CEP is. And then as a smaller community-based organization, just some of the barriers we've seen to serving low-income communities around health, safety, and energy efficiency for the last 40 years that I think it would be good for the committee to know and be thinking about, because I believe that you know, the people who developed PCEF were very aware of some of those barriers and really were creative in thinking about how we can get around them by using these funds. So I wanted to talk about our experience as a nonprofit who does this work. So who do we serve? Oh, wrong one. There we go. This last year, about 66% of the households we serve are very low income, so below 30% median family income. And the vast majority are 80% or below. 61% of the participants identify as a person of color. And that is mainly, we serve right now mainly in Multnomah County, with the majority of the people we serve in the city of Portland. And that's about 1,500 people a year through all of our programming. As we think about who we serve and what our mission is, I wanted to, again, go back a little bit big picture and think about why are we talking about energy efficiency and why focus on that as a residential issue. And I'm really appreciative of some of the remarks, especially around what County brought up about how energy efficiency brings in home health and health benefits. I won't go into those too much myself, but I'm really glad that they brought them up. So we know from research that's not been done by CEP, but by others, that to keep global warming to 1.5% degrees Celsius, we need to cut energy use by 50% in every single building in the next 10 years. So 50% energy use reduction in 10 years. That's really huge. It's really major, and there's a lot of work that it needs to go on across the board in all kinds of programming. If we kind of narrow that down to Portland, other people at BPS let me know that in their recent studies, they found that there are 160,000 single-family homes in Portland. So I'll talk about single-family right now as opposed to talking about multifamily, just to give you some examples. Of those 160,000 homes, in the last 2 years, there have been about 15,000 home energy scores done. And for someone who is going to put their home on the market, right now they are required by the city of Portland to do a home energy score. So we have now some real baseline data about what is in a home and what needs to be done. And based on that data, we see that if those homes were able to do a deep retrofit, so similar to what maybe Multnomah County is doing in those homes, we would see about a 40% less energy use in those homes. So if we need a 50% reduction, a deep energy retrofit would get us to 40%. Now at CEP, because we primarily have served low-income communities, we thought, we actually want to see if that tracks in a low-income home. And we have 4 staff that do home energy scores. So we took a little bit of seed funding and we started doing home energy scores in low-income households. And not so surprised to learn that initial study we're finding is that there's much higher energy use in low-income households. And that would be because of a lot of deferred maintenance. So just really, leaky homes and people who just can't afford to do those higher end energy upgrades. So it wasn't too surprising to us. And when we think about what would it cost to us as a city to really look at those 160,000 just single family homes, if we wanted to do 50% reduction that we need to do in the entire US to really reach some climate goals, research done recently by Marty Frank, Bruce Van Clark, and Ben Hannes, again, not me, they estimated that approximately we need $2.78 billion in the city of Portland alone. And remember, we need to do this work in 10 years. So it's it's really on a scale that is well even beyond what we can do in PCEF. But Bruce gave a really good presentation on this a few months ago at a conference we were at. And if you think about that in a number by itself, it's good to remember that a football stadium that was built in 2010 cost $1.6 billion. So if we can spend $1.6 billion on a football stadium, why are we not thinking about more money in energy efficiency? It's not that there's not, and I bring that up because it's not that there aren't opportunities and funding streams and mechanisms. It's political will, right? There hasn't been political will to make these type of investments that we know have to be made, or we know we're not going to meet climate goals that are really disproportionately impacting the communities we serve. So I wanted to bring that up just to kind of give some context. So if we were able to do this type of work, we could power 50,000 homes just from energy saved. We could save $50 million in excess utility bills annually. We could eliminate 200,000 tons of carbon emissions annually. So there will be, major changes that could be made with this type of work. And those kind of common energy efficiency upgrades, right, are insulation, air sealing, mechanical upgrades. You'll see those things come up. Those are just the kind of big ticket items. Now, we tend to serve a lot of people who can't afford a big ticket item. So CEP as an organization has really focused differently. We don't have funding to do full energy retrofits currently. We work in two primary areas of community education through workshops. Again, that's how we were founded in 1979, because we believe that empowering people to understand what's going on in their home and what they can do to make a difference in their life is really important. And then we have direct in-home services. So I'll spend a little bit of time explaining a little bit more about what we do currently in our current model. It's changed a little bit over 40 years. In weatherization, we do a basic weatherization class that reaches upward 400 to 600 homes a year, depending on funding in a given year. And that class actually is really great for renters. I know there have been a lot of questions for renters. We teach people to understand how a home works, how energy is used in a home, but we also take all of our workshops. We believe in doing, it is a DIY. We will teach you in the workshop how to do something. And we think it's really important that if you're going to teach somebody how to do that, you give them the materials to do it. So anyone who comes to our basic weatherization workshop also will receive a kit of about $150 worth of materials that we will teach them in the workshop how to use. And that program is also income qualified. We do a smaller, much smaller scale DIY attic insulation. And actually this summer we started a cooling workshop to teach people what to do when it's too hot outside. And that worked with a lot of multifamily properties where we got the landlord to come in and do the work with us so that the homeowner, the tenants can understand that they have the landlord's permission to install the materials that we hand out and that the landlord's on board and okay with what we're teaching them to do. We also, going into kind of the more healthy homes realm, teach lead poisoning prevention workshops. We have a basic lead poisoning prevention and advanced workshop if you're going to do like a small scale renovation. And then we lend out for free HEPA vacuums for people who need to do some lead paint mitigation in their homes and safely remove that contaminant. We are also involved in the Oregon Community Solar Program. And if you don't know about that program, 10% of the capacity of Oregon Community Solar has been set aside for low-income households. And we are serving as the low-income facilitator for that program, and we'll be responsible for outreach, education, enrollment of low-income participants. And what's really exciting about community solar is you don't have to own a roof. You don't have to have a great roof and great repair. You can be a renter. It doesn't matter because the solar is not going to be located physically on your building. So it opens up opportunities for people who've never had access to renewables to be have renewables for their home energy use. The other side of CEP is our direct in-home services. We are licensed contractors. Actually, I held the contractor's license, and that was as much a shock to me as anyone else because I never expected to be a licensed contractor. We have a staff of 4 who are all auditors who can do energy audits and home repair audits. So those 4 people will go out and do an assessment of every home that we serve through our in-homes program, and that's about 200 and so a year. And then we do basic repairs, everything from like cleaning somebody's gutter to replacing the roof, upgrading electricals, all different types of repair of different scale. We do basic weatherization in the homes. And then more recently, we've been doing a lot more energy upgrades. So like we have done 63 heat pump water heater replacements in the last 18 months. We've done 10 ductless heat pumps. We've installed almost 100 Nest smart thermostats, and these are all free for low-income households. So that work gives us a really good understanding of what's going on in a home. Unfortunately, we don't have the funding streams to be able to do a full retrofit, and I'm going to go into a section on barriers in a little bit to talk about how funding plays out that limits what we can do based on like geographic area and such. That's really funder driven. We also, as I said, do home energy scores. So we do that as a fee for service for anybody who's putting their house on the market. We also administer the low income home energy score for the city. And we do workshops for anyone who's interested in understanding more about how to read a home energy score. We really try to educate realtors so they can educate who their clients are. And again, we've been using that in-house capacity to really be looking at and offering that as service to our low-income homeowners. We also have a free consultation service. So this is more for a kind of mid-range. Anyone can call us and get a free 30-minute consultation on what their systems are in their home. And through that, we can refer them to a vetted contractor and help them with financing. So if you needed, you know, a new furnace, Michael, and you wanted to help with financing, we can help like somebody set up and find out what those financing options are and help set up an on-bill program. So that's all free, offered that kind of service advice. Saying all of that, of what we currently do, there really are barriers in what we can provide and how we provide it as a nonprofit. And I wanted to really talk more about that than just who CEP is, because I've also heard a lot of questions about barriers. So I rank them in kind of three areas: institutional barriers, outreach and educational barriers, and financial barriers. And by institutional, I mean, you know, who's designing these programs? Who set the policy behind a program? Because we're often implementers implementing maybe a flawed design. And, you know, we can't always change that flawed design. Maybe PCEF funds will help us get around that, but we can't always. And so I wanted to give you three examples. Geographic, within the city of Portland, we get funding from the Portland Housing Bureau to do weatherization and repairs. If you are lucky enough to live in an urban renewal zone, in interstate or lens, you can receive substantially more than if you do not live in there because of the funding structures within the tax increment funding zones. So in interstate, we can spend up to $10,000 a home. That is not like our overhead and labor time, just directly in the home, to do a full roof repair, electrical panel, other types of energy upgrades. If you live across the street, we have situations where there's clients who, one client lives on one side of the street in the urban renewal zone and can receive that. Another client lives directly across the street and we have a $100 per home budget. So there's just some within the system that we have right now, some real odd geographic barriers that are not equitable and not easy to navigate, and it's really confusing often to people who come to us for services is why their neighbor just got a new roof and we have to tell them no, and we are bound by those rules. Cost effectiveness. Michael brought up cost effectiveness. I will disclose I'm on the Diversity Advisory Council Energy Trust. I highly encourage you, when we look at PCEF, to throw out cost effectiveness. Low income programming is not cost effective because of the models they use and they are required to use. If you are using a system where you have a cash rebate or an incentive, that assumes you have cash to get a rebate, right? So you can't even enter the system if you don't have the cash to get the rebate. And we have been doing some low income work with Energy Trust, and to make that pencil out is not easy, and it is not something really scalable on a level that we really need to do when I was talking earlier about like 50% reduction in every home. So don't think about cost effectiveness. I mean, obviously we're using public funds. We need to think about how we use them, but using that old model in the energy sector is not going to get to where we need to get with low-income fund homes. I don't think we should be asking low-income community members to be paying into the system. They've already paid into the system. They don't need to pay again. I think another big barrier is how resources are divided by income level. So Mike and Gary brought up, how the public purpose charges are divided. So when the legislation that set up Energy Trust was set up, about 13% was set aside to go to low-income programs that go through CAP agencies. Well, more than 13% of utility customers are low income. So by its very design, it's setting up a program that leaves out people. And if we look at those policy decisions of why the public purpose charge was set up that way, I think they were rooted in some paradigms of 15 to 20 years ago that just need to be thrown out. And PCEF, you have an opportunity to learn why they did that and to learn from that, but to really think of cost effectiveness differently. I like to think about what is the cost of not doing it within 10 years, right? So that you think about, it's going to cost a lot of money to serve people because we have larger needs than a small, narrow, cost-effective measure that maybe the Public Utility Commission has set up. So I say don't use that as a model. Learn and work with them and use their incentives where we can use them. But don't use that as the model. I also find a large institutional barrier as a nonprofit is around lack of coordination between funders, government agencies. We're lucky that we've really tried to diversify our funding. So we get funding from Housing Bureau, we get funding from the county, we get funding from Energy Trust. And it takes an enormous amount of time to track all the different things every single funder wants you to measure, to figure out all of their different quirks on how to qualify a client, how to, bill them and get reimbursements. All of that coordination for every new funder, there's no consistency between them. So if you think about new groups that want to get into this field, who do energy efficiency work that haven't, that are going to apply for this is going to be a big barrier for them. And then you also think about the client perspective. It is a huge barrier from a client to have to navigate how many different services there are out there. Do I qualify? Do I have to, do I have to submit job, tax forms to this one? This one makes it easy. Who do I call? Some of them make it easy, some of them make it incredibly hard. So that lack of coordination, and then, PCEF is gonna come in with new rules and new things to track. It's really something to be thinking about as a barrier to how we roll this work out. And that is an institutional policy design, program design issue. The next area is around education and outreach. As I said, we've been doing education around weatherization for 40 years, and there's still just a general lack of knowledge around energy efficiency, what it is, what new technology is. It's hard to, if we go into a home, people want a new kitchen or bathroom. They don't always want a new furnace. Some of those things are needed and they make a big difference, but it's not always the thing that somebody thinks of as the first thing they want in their home. There's a lot in the energy world, there's a lot of I really struggled on how to even describe this, but poorly prioritized outreach is what I landed on. I heard a lot over the last few years from different groups in the energy efficiency world and utilities, it's just hard to reach certain communities. They're hard to reach. And I would get really angry because nobody's hard to reach if you know what you're doing. No one's hard to reach if you design a program to reach them. No one's hard to reach if you sit in a community and listen. We sometimes point out, payday lenders are great at reaching low-income communities. Right? It's not about whether somebody's hard to reach. It's whether you figured out on your end, program design people, energy efficient sector, that it's on you to change your way you do outreach. And that has been a huge barrier in what we see, because we reach a lot of different people. And we're constantly trying to change perceptions around how agencies do their outreach. And a third area around this, some services are just really hard to reach. really hard to access. You know, I'll be honest, as great as a program as a county weatherization has, we get a lot of clients who come to us saying it's hard to get into the system because of, you know, they brought up like their requirements that they have to reach, that they have as an agency. They know that like it's hard to get in sometimes if you have to go downtown to drop off paperwork, or you have a lot of paperwork you have to collect. Like, we make our application process incredibly simple. We let people self-verify their income. We go all over to reach people. So like, you just need to think about like how services are reached. That can be a huge barrier. And then finally, at the end of the day, it's finances. You know, a lot of people just don't have there's just lack of personal finances for energy efficiency. It might not just be the most important thing. Even if you have a little extra money set aside, it's not maybe the first thing you're going to do in your home. And then again, back to kind of policy design and program design. We get at CEP really tired. We sit in a lot of places where we're the only low income advocates. And we hear people say, oh, you know, the people have got to have skin in the game. We hear over and over again. And we're sick of it. Like, people already have invested into these systems. People already pay taxpayers. Low-income people have skin in the game already. We don't need to be asking them to pay more. We need to be designing programs that meet people where they are. We need to be designing programs thinking about, you know, not that everyone gets the same thing, but they get what they need based on where they are. And that assumption that has been sitting in kind of the residential energy efficiency world needs to go, because I think it creates a lot of bad programs. And simply funding doesn't meet the need. I mean, you hear that from other people who've been here before me, and then the numbers that I've thrown out at the beginning. PCEF is great. PCEF is a first step. But I was just doing some math earlier thinking, okay, like, you know, the money that might be coming in, it's not going to all go to residential energy efficiency, right? There's a big pie. If we took $15 million a year, just that, and we looked at how many homes we have and the cost, it'd take 185 years. So we've got 10. It's a you know, something to be thinking about, how we're going to like really take this funding and leverage it, cooperate with existing funding, and take it as an opportunity to start pushing for other funding in other places. At CEP, we don't ever like to end a presentation without a call to action or a kind of some solutions. So my last little thing is, you know, our call to action to you on the committee on things to think about as you're designing your programs. Try to keep it as flexible and accessible as you can. I know that there's going to be some weird city accountant, attorney come in and say, no, legally you can't do X, Y, and Z, because I've already heard it. But where you can, keep it flexible and accessible for not only the nonprofits that will be implementing these programs, but for the people who are going to access them, because flexibility and accessibility are always barriers if we don't design for that. Allow programs to do full energy retrofits, because like we have, even with like we get $10,000 a year in one neighborhood, we have to maybe go back to that house year after year after year. We can't go in and just fix a house. Keep funding and valuing community education, because the more people understand, the more people know, the more people have access to information, just the better decisions they can make for their own lives. And again, don't be bound by cost effectiveness. It just makes it really hard to serve low income households. Don't let that like language bind you, and do think of those non-energy benefits. They're really important. And the kind of, not even non-energy, but you know, sometimes you gotta replace a roof and upgrade an electrical panel before you can even think about going in and doing energy efficiency, because that's where the house is. So thank you so much for letting me come here today.
All right, thank you, Charity. It's so we have about 13 minutes left before 9 o'clock, and and then everybody gets to drive home. But I did want to see if there were a few questions for Charity. We do have a few minutes. Michael, you touched your name tag, so that's all it takes at this point.
I'm going to go all high horse for a second. Thank you, Charity. That was awesome. I really think that the points you made are very important, right? On efficiency in low-income neighborhoods and low-income families. And one of the problems that I've always had with Oregon Energy Trust, and I could be wrong, so Oregon Energy Trust, please correct me if I'm wrong, but everybody pays in at 3% on utility. And the people that pull out on the residential side, right? I'm not talking the industrial side, which is clearly a huge user, but on the residential side, seems to be at the top, and the people that are paying for the people at the top to get solar put on their homes or to get a new furnace or a fancy nest, are a lot of that's coming from people at the bottom paying for people at the top to get that. And I want to make sure that, like, as a PCEF, as our organization goes, that we don't fall into that trap of taking money from the bottom and reinvesting it in the top in any sort of way.
So I would point out to remember that was by design. When I go back to the design thing, right? 13% was pulled aside to be for low income. And Energy Trust was, as I was explained, not even by Energy Trust, by other people, there was a wall between what CAB agencies could do with the 13% low income set aside and what Energy Trust was expected to do. And by design, that cost-effective measure in their system means it's really incredibly hard for them to serve low income. They're trying to get around that. We're trying to with them. But if we're talking at scale, it just, but yes, I think the whole, I personally think the whole thing is flawed and it needs to be reassessed.
Maria?
Thank you for your presentation and for everybody sitting here with us getting all this wonderful content. I thought that the theme tonight was clear, that justice-oriented clean energy work takes a lot of intention and a lot of thinking on how do we reverse those barriers and the ways that systems are set up. So my ask for you and for anybody else in the room or anyone listening is to continue to make clear for us what justice-oriented clean energy work looks like to you, and how do we operationalize that as we're thinking about the grants and we're thinking about priorities. Because those themes are coming up, but maybe the specifics on what that really looks like on the ground isn't fully clear to us yet, but these presentations tonight gave us some real life examples of what this work looks like on the ground. So thank you.
Robin?
Yeah, hi, thank you. So you made some comments today about the rules of this game that are unfair. You commented, something along the lines of, having the skin in the game doesn't really work, and cost effectiveness, don't really, don't give it that much consideration. And I think some of those rules come from a accountability perspective, the need to apply some accountability to people receiving the funds or people managing the funds. And I'm just kind of curious, are you suggesting that there may be other ways to hold organizations, individuals accountable for using these public funds, or are you suggesting just do away with accountability or something else?
I mean, I'm a 501c3. We're accountable to all kinds of people, our funders, our donors. I'm not saying don't be accountable. I'm saying that the old paradigm of how to measure cost effectiveness is not something this group should model. It's very limited. It doesn't serve low income. I think there are other ways you could look at how to judge and monitor and evaluate the effectiveness of a program. But if you're only looking at like your bang for your buck, I mean, it costs a lot of money to do whole home energy retrofits, and you're not going to I don't think you should be expecting a low-income person to have to pay part of that. I think those services should go free. That's what I'm getting at. They shouldn't have to say, okay, well, to get this incentive, I got to put in $500 to get $100 off. Well, that's okay for, people of means to get a discount. But someone who's low income, I think it's wrong to ask them to do that. And we don't do that at our agency. We wouldn't ask that. So I think there's ways that with public purpose funds, we should be thinking about our public funds, accountability, hold a nonprofit, hold me accountable for sure on how I administer the funds or how we run our program and how we manage our finances. That's different than how we think about what a low-income household will receive. Is kind of the distinction I'm making. They shouldn't have to pay money to get those services. And to get an incentive right now, you've got to pay some money or you don't get a discount.
So you're suggesting perhaps using a different lens when designing these programs and evaluating the criteria that factors into other things than just pure dollars?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And please.
Well, thank you for the presentation and all the previous presentations. Thank you for, and also for reframing skin in the game for us. I think this is a lot for, plenty for, us as a committee to chew on and understand moving forward what accountability could look like, as well as delivering benefits. I think, especially with the previous presentation, it's clear that there is a health and social aspect to this that we need to consider, and there is a cost to folks, and folks are already footing the bill for the cost of health and social impacts when we aren't doing these retrofits. So I think we've heard, there is a cost of justice, but there is also a cost to injustice, and it's just I think it's just an accounting trick right now. I think one question I'd like to ask is, what can we do to make the application flexible and accessible? And what can we do to sort of signal to other funders to do something similar, to sort of think about the user perspective in this end?
So I think when you're, there's different parts of the process, right? There's an RFP process. So I just give you an example of something that BPS did an RFP a couple of years ago for the low income home energy score. That contract RFP required anyone who applied to have a certain amount of insurance that they had to prove to apply. That ruled out all kinds of groups who wouldn't even apply because they didn't want to spend $3,000 for insurance when they might not even get the contract. So, we benefited from it because we got the insurance. We as an agency had some money to do that. But that kind of administrative rule that someone in the city decided had to be in, it wasn't even the staff, they kind of fought it too, but somebody decided that in that RFP process, there had to be this insurance requirement to apply. I can get an insurance requirement maybe if you're awarded and give somebody time to do that. But if there's going to be kind of licensings and rulings around what an organization needs to do this, do not require them to have it up front, because what if they invest all that time and money and don't even win the award? Right? That's just kind of one example I can think of that's around an RFP process that becomes so complicated that no one can apply. Balancing that with what you need. That, we don't know yet because you guys haven't defined some of that yet. I can say another thing that's really hard that is always on my mind is any group that's going to get, that's thinking of trying to get more money than they currently have. They're thinking of scaling up their programs. No matter what their baseline is, there are real financial and administrative and organizational barriers for a nonprofit to do that. For example, in the Housing Bureau, we have to spend money to get reimbursed. So, we have to take out loans to do that. You just have to have a loan to manage cash flow. So thinking about whether this is a grant where you get money up front, or it's a reimbursement contract where you have to spend the money and get reimbursed, that makes a big difference in who's going to even have the capacity to apply, because it's to have to take out a loan to manage cash flow for a contract that from the city is not everybody can even get the access to capital to do that. So there are just some like things you can think about on that end, on what those requirements are, what that contract is going to look like, that can make or break a group. So that's why I go back to be as flexible as you can. Allow the groups to experiment where they have ideas, and have that parameter be enough to allow for that. And I know you're going to come up against city contracting rules. Like another example, we have contractors, we sub out, like we're licensed contractors, but we sub out some of the work because we're not licensed to do everything. We're not roofers. We're not going to do roofing. And right now we have to get 3 bids for any job over 2,000. The contractors don't want to keep bidding all the time on a job they're not going to get. And at the meeting on the 5th, all the contractors said, get rid of this bid process. We can't do that under Housing Bureau funds. We have to get the bids. We're required. And it is incredibly hard and frustrating. So sometimes it's those kind of like small details of how you implement that can kill a new big idea. And where you can use this funds to get around those barriers, the better off we'll all be. The more creative we can all be together, the more we can serve people who've been left out.
Thanks, Charity. So Shanice has been waiting for a while to give her thoughts or questions. It is 9 o'clock, so I think I would though invite any of the other committee members, if you have any kind of closing thoughts. I'm sure that we can go a couple minutes over, but Shanice.
Thanks. It'll be quick. I just want to also thank you for your presentation tonight. I think for me, it is striking a lot of the core language that the Portland Clean Energy Fund is calling for. And I guess as we kind of wrestle with what next steps look like, I think I have a huge interest in continuing a relationship with you, and especially as we think about this notion of justice through the process and the goal. And this conversation about cost, I think, is a very good one, and for us to continue grappling with income and how we might hold folks accountable who do have maybe different levels of access. When you think about how residential spaces can, based on income level, commercial spaces. So it's thinking about those things in terms of how we center folks who are most disproportionately impacted, and all of the things that are connected through those processes, like health. So yeah, I'm feeling excited and energized, and I think that there's room to think about strategies that we can create a model for, and building that coordinated transition that we need to see. That ultimately there are links to partners in this room and who aren't in this room, and so those are the things that I'm thinking about. Justice, right, through this process. I think we have some room to grapple with how we hold accountability for different people in different ways, and how we provide access for the folks who are intended through this work. But appreciate you and the things that you've kind of elevated to help us work through that.
Thank you. Any other closing thoughts from committee members? All right, well then we're going to call it a night. Thank you all, and we'll see you in the new year.